Good afternoon. I'm Luddy, and my alternate name is Frostbite's G.I. Joe Repro. I'm doing this video interview today on behalf of Toys R Oz, and I'm sitting down today with Jon Sorensen. Mate, how are you?
Oh, doing good, thanks.
Yeah. So if we look like we're awkwardly discussing stuff, it's because we already spent 10 minutes having a chat, getting a recording done, and my system decided to poop itself. So we're just going to crack on again, and let's just hope that doesn't happen. So, John, mate, where are you based?
Yep. I live in Perth, and I've been here quite a few years, and I originally grew up back in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm. So you spent your childhood in New Zealand. You said previously that you were born in early 80s, so you were born in the 80s?
Exactly 1980.
Okay, yeah, cool. So really, a lot of generations of toys would have been hitting on that Gen 2 or Gen 3, wouldn't it, for you?
Yeah, there was, it was a lot of stuff because see, I would have been too young for some of the stuff from 80 to 83 because I would have been too young. But a lot of the things, Masters started early and ran for a number of years. Transformers hit mid-80s. G.I. Joe hit mid-80s. So all that stuff was around. It was still in the stores. People had it. If you went after school to some kid's house, people had it in their toy chest or playroom, whatever they had stuff to play with. So you see a lot of stuff, even if you didn't have it yourself, you saw a lot of those toys.
And what was New Zealand like? What town were you? Or what region were you from?
Christchurch.
Christchurch, yeah.
In the South Island.
So you mentioned earlier, like you didn't have specialty toy stores. What were the names of the toy of the general shops over there that you were buying stuff
we
from?
had there was a department store called Farmers, and that would have like Sega video games and toys as well. It's pretty much like Myer here, or
okay.
It was a bit step up. It was a bit pricier than Kmart, so it was more like a Myer with mostly clothing and household stuff. And we did get years later, they started having toy worlds and that, but that wasn't until much later.
What, like the 90s or something? Or
yeah, into the 90s and that. Like, I mean, then we had like the Warehouse and we had Toy World, but that was getting into like mid to late 90s.
And I mentioned earlier, like in the last video, that my childhood, I only got sort of a toy now and then, and I, for my birthday or Christmas, I might get one big thing. What was your childhood like?
Well, our family was very working class, and you'd say relatively poor. Most of the kids I grew up with we all went to public school. There was a lot of shenanigans in the neighborhood, and that it was really rough sort of neighborhoods, but people kind of looked out for each other, and you knew where to stay away from, that sort of thing. But yeah, the toys and stuff, we had, like generic $2, $5 toys as a kid that you mucked around with and would barely remember, and were just non-licensed, generic, cheap stuff. But things like licensed stuff, like a Ninja Turtle or a Batman or a Transformer, that was like a birthday or a Christmas thing. That wasn't something you got any old day of the week. And I was at the age where I missed the G.I. Joe stuff. It was around, but I've never really been into military stuff, so I didn't really have that, because that was the more affordable toy line out of all of them, really, the figures more than the vehicles.
Now, you showed me a Transformer before that I think's absolutely outstanding because of the story you told me with it. So crack on with that.
My grandfather got me this one. It's Double Cross, and I've had this since, I want to say 87, 88 he was out. Sometimes it was about a year later in Australia, New Zealand, by the time I actually get stuff. But yeah, my grandfather got me this one, and this one was kind of special because my granddad spoiled me. Like, he'd get me like lollies and stuff and lotto tickets, and if he got me a scratchy ticket and I won $10, he'd let me keep it, even though he bought it. Awesome. But he got me this just one random day that wasn't a birthday or a Christmas. And he just bought it for me. And this would have been at least 30, maybe 30, 35 New Zealand dollars back in the day. Much more expensive than the cheaper, smaller ones. And it's survived all these years. I think, I ran around as a kid and, climbed trees and whacked other kids with sticks and stuff like that. But I didn't really take this guy outside. He was an inside toy. So that's probably why he's survived all these years and he's transforms fine. All his joints are still good. He's got sticker wear. Even his little spark gimmick still works in there.
He looks beautiful, mate.
Yeah, he's one of my all-time favourite toys. Like this has travelled from New Zealand to Victoria, eventually to Perth, but I didn't have it for nearly 10 years. When I moved in share house when I used to be in Perth, I didn't have nothing. I slept on the floor on a mat for years.
Right.
And then when I travelled around, this was way back in New Zealand at my dad's place, stored like in a little cupboard, just a couple of boxes of stuff I'd kept when I'd left high school and left New Zealand to come to Australia. There was stuff I kept. Here's another thing I kept, this Tomy Crackbot. I've had that since that was early 80s. He's electronic, they roll around and got the little wheels under there.
That's bloody amazing, mate. I don't reckon I've even seen one of those before.
Yeah, well, there was a whole line of them. They used to be on the Pizza Hut ads that have the big round cylinder one with the tray. It'd come out with a Coke can on it. And there's RC ones, but this one just bumps into things and then keeps going. And it has a sound sensor on there. If you make a clapping noise, it'll stop, and then he'll do his batteries aren't in there, but he goes like this, and his head goes up and down like that.
That's awesome.
But I don't know. I guess I was just a nerdy kid. I loved all the comic cartoons and superhero stuff as a kid. Later on, when I was a teenager, I into comic books and that. But I tended to hold on to things, not in a hoarding way, but like I didn't smash them. I had friends that trashed their toys in a week, and I've still got this like 30 plus years later.
Well, yeah, it's you're the one laughing now, aren't you, mate? All these kids that were throwing their toys from trees and stuff, and you've got this beautiful memory
like
sitting in your hand.
He's got his ears on there; they're not snapped off. Don't ask me how.
So, and I've asked you about it before, but like your collection looks like it just spans endless. Is it? How many different toy lines are you collecting?
I don't know exactly, because I used to be pretty much just I'd buy like Marvel stuff. I'd buy superhero things. Like the very first Marvel Legends line, I want to say it was around 2001, and it was actually called Spider-Man Classics. That was the tooling they then used in the next year for the very first Toy Biz Marvel Legends, and I bought some of those. Actually, that's just over here. Yeah, that was the best Spider-Man they did back then. That was like 2001 or so. It's better than most of the ones they're doing now, because I've got this year's model on the same shelf, but doesn't have half the points of articulation. He's got the much proper ribs and sculpt, all of that. So I used to get into all that kind of stuff. But I love Transformers, and I had I only had 2 or 3 as a kid. Such as that Double Cross, a little Beachcomber, who's like a little sand dune buggy thing.
I love Beachcomber.
Yeah, he's awesome. And the great thing about these guys is like you don't have. They're so simple. You don't even have to look at them what you're doing, because you've done it so many times.
Yeah.
And look, he's done.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always loved the Transformers. The show was always on repeat, so I kept watching that. But I had a period of my teenage years where someone actually gave me some other like G1 Transformers, like a couple of Predacons, a beat up old Optimus Prime with trailer. And I must have been about 14 or 15. And this other guy was a bit older, and he saw that I liked them. And I had this old catalog I was still looking at as a weird teenager, looking at this catalog from my childhood. And he actually just gave me some one day. He kind of loaned them to me to like borrow, but he never wanted them back again. He just let me keep them. And I think he just grew out of them and didn't care and gave them to me. So I had a pile of about 10 or 15 that were really cool. And I had those for years. Eventually, I actually sold them off really cheap about 20 years ago for someone else to enjoy. And I built up a collection later on in life. Yep, that's one of the ones that catalogs I had. Yep, that's the one. It's like 86, 87 roundabout catalog.
Actually, I just got this
cons on that side and the spots on the other. Yeah, that's the one. That's the exact one I used to sit there and look at for hours. And like, I've owned a version of. I haven't owned the vintage ones, but the modern lines. And the modern lines, I've owned a version of pretty much every single character that's on there now. And I have had a few.
off Misfits Group off an auction a couple
Yeah.
of weeks ago, and
Yeah.
it was just some paperwork, and like I picked up,
The old tech specs.
the tech specs.
Nice.
Like how awesome's that? Just all paperwork stuff, and I thought, you always buy Transformers or toys or whatever, but I think a lot of people don't put enough love into these old pieces of paper.
Yeah, well, that's high glossy magazine type material on those. So you don't get that now. It's black and white and cheap if they have it at all.
Yeah.
So it was a high quality thing. Yeah, that's the old Mailways.
Mm.
I love those catalogs.
Did you guys do you remember as a kid like doing any of the mail away stuff?
I don't know if we got it in New Zealand. I have no idea.
Yes.
I couldn't tell you. Like it might have been available, but I don't know if they had a New Zealand thing, or you would have had to send away to America, I would assume.
Yeah.
And postage isn't always terribly reliable, as you know, going down the centre of the world.
It's bloody not reliable now, mate. In 23.
I've got a package from BBTS at the moment where I've ordered a whole bunch of Masters Origin stuff, and it's MIA for about 6 weeks now. But yeah, the other stuff I had from back then is Ninja Turtles. That's the first line that I actually started buying myself when I have the exact memory of the first figures I ever bought when I was about 8 years old. Saved up 3 weeks pocket money, $15 New Zealand. That's 3 times 5. And for that, I had to wash the dishes and tidy the house. I didn't get it for free. I had to do chores. I picked up General Trag and Baxter, who were like villains in the original first couple of waves of Turtles. And I actually went there with the intention to buy a couple of Turtles. But I looked at these other figures, and I've always liked monsters and weird-looking creatures and stuff like that. And so I looked at the Turtles, put them down, and I went, well, they're cool, but the sculpt is it's objectively beautiful, but it's nothing special. It's just the early Mirage look with the sneering face. Whereas some of the other characters are amazingly detailed, like your General Trag or Baxter. This guy, Scumbug, just creepy, weird details like antennas. Like the other villains and mutants appeal to me more than the Turtles in the figures.
Casey, mate.
Yeah. So most of the other characters are more interesting to look at from a sculpt point of view. Like I got into the comics years later. I loved all the characters, but the figures, the guys that worked on these loved doing weird, gross out stuff, and that was a real thing of that era, which I still enjoy.
So, like, do you have a favorite toy line? Would you say Transformers is more loved than Turtles or something?
It's kind of almost equal as far like as a kid when I was really young, I wanted all the Transformers but couldn't afford them, and it's my most loved show that I've watched. That original Marvel Sunbow show I've probably watched it about 100 times at this point all the way through. I watch it all the way through at least once a year, pretty much. Whereas the Turtles is more. They're better in the comics. They did some later shows like the 4K Kids show on Fox. They did the Nickelodeon. Those shows are fantastic. The first live action movie, they were good. But overall, the comics are where the better story and lore is. And then I do love the toy line to this day. But there's not as many characters I want. Like I've got most of the ones I want from the first few waves. There's a couple I'm still chasing now years later, and they're expensive even loose on eBay. But I get some here and there. Whereas Transformers, Ninja Turtles, I've owned maybe 50 or so vintage figures, and probably I've got about 50 or 60 NECA ones now on that shelf behind me. Whereas Transformers, I've easily owned over 1,000 Transformers in the last decade plus. Awesome. But I don't have them all. I have them. I keep them for a bit. I whittle down or cull my collection to the essential ones. Like I've got like Decepticon shelf over there, and I try and get down to the essential characters I want, or if it's just a really cool toy that's like super fun, I might keep it for a couple of years and then move it on again. Like I started buying all those Titan Transformers. I've got like about 4 above me up on the cupboard up there. I just love robots, and I think partly it's having stuff like that as a kid that just got me hooked on any kind of robots, really. All the Japanese robots and super robots and combining things. I just love it.
No, that's fantastic, mate. And is there any of the toy lines that you just focus in on a particular set of years, or you just whatever gets released, you just pick cool stuff and buy it?
I pretty much all my life I've picked the characters I like. I've never been a completist for anything. I mean, when I used to buy comic books, I'd get them every month, and I read Spider-Man comics from like 10 years, from about 1990 through 2005. Some of the worst years in Spider-Man to actually read comics.
Yeah.
So I had a heck of a lot of those, and I love the stories. But when it comes to toys, I just buy what I like, and I do have sometimes whole waves of certain waves and lines and things, but I just get the characters I like. And for the Transformers, where they've never had a scale, but they started doing an actual scale since the sort of Siege and Titan's Return a few years back. So I just went, they're doing all these characters in a nice way that looks decent. So I've got pretty much all the characters that were in the original show, the movie in season 3, which is around 65 characters or so. And those are the ones I'm focused on keeping long term to put on the shelf, other than my big giant robots and my reissue Triptychon or Skylynx and Metroplex, because they were the ones I love. Big chunky robots that look like they could be like sumo wrestlers, like that Metro. I just go for the stuff I really love. But I guess over the years, there's some things that have gone wide enough and deep enough where there's, I've got Marvel Legends, stayed away from it for years because got in on the first ones, got rid of them, stayed away from it for years. I thought if I buy one or two, I'm going to get a heap. And then the last couple of years, I've probably gotten 50 or 60 Marvel Legends, and prices are rubbish. Don't like a lot of the bucks. But I just went, no, I want my core Fantastic Four, I want my X-Men, I want my original Avengers, I want my Spider-Man, the main villains. So I just focus on the things I like that have some kind of meaning to me. Like I watched that Fox Spider-Man show back in the day, and the X-Men animated show in the 90s got me into the X-Men comics, and I just rewatched that all again like this year, all the way through both of those shows. And so I go for the characters. I go for the characters and the story, and that gets me going, well, I've got this guy, now I want the other guy that goes with him, that he fights or battles in the show or whatever.
And it's man, that theme song for the X-Men cartoon from the 90s. Like it's almost bone chilling now.
It just gets you. It's like, this is an action show. This is full on.
Because I think some shows, like you think, Transformers and say G.I. Joe type thing, they had theme songs, but that song or the tune that went for the X-Men was just magic, I reckon.
It's a really cool theme. They towards the last season, they kind of remix it or change it, and it's not as good. The first one they had was the best one. Yeah, it's just like in your face. It's like, this Wolverine's gonna this is gonna happen.
Are you a big fan of all the X-Men movies?
I don't know if I'm a big fan. I mean, I've watched them a whole bunch. I've got the Blu-ray sets, but sometimes I'm a masochist, where it's like, even if it's not a good film, I'll just watch it anyway.
Yeah.
But no, I definitely love like all the X-Men characters, and I have for a long time. Like my favorite comic characters have always been like Batman, Punisher, Wolverine. That's been like my favorite three dudes. Like
just the three dudes that kick ass.
Yeah, exactly. All the anti-heroes. I've always liked the anti-heroes and villains. It's later in life I came to actually appreciate Captain America and the kind of values it stands for, and the original comics, and fighting oppression and that sort of thing.
What about I don't know if you were reading it, but like when Marvel was pretty much going broke and they started releasing the Marvel Knights.
Oh, they're going broke a bunch of times. Got bought and sold a bunch of times through the 90s and the bankruptcy, and bought out, and then they became merged with Toy Biz and all that. And But I read most of the Marvel stuff. I read like in my young years was through probably 1990 through 2000. I read. I bought the Spider-Man, but like we were poor in that. I'd save up my pocket money, and then I got a paper round where I could deliver newspapers, and I'd get a whole, I think it was like $15 and it took me like 6 hours to walk around in the rain in New Zealand winter, putting these community papers or whatever into the letterbox. But they gave me $15 per week, and I could buy about 3 comics for that, because comics were about $5 each. This is like 95, 97. So they would the prices were going up even back then. But before I used to buy all those or could afford any of them, we used to go into the comic shop and just hang around and just read stuff on the shelf. And the old folks that ran it there were a really nice retired couple who had probably done several retail things, I'd say, in their life, and comics is what they got back into, comics/magazines. But they weren't bothered. I think they were wise, because they saw the kids that were traveling 30 or 40 minutes from the wrong side of town all the way into the comic shop in the heart of the city, and doing that for more than 2 years. They weren't buying anything. Eventually became some of the best customers there that bought a lot of stuff. So we used to read stuff on the racks. I would go in and read X-Men and Spider-Man and Daredevil. What he was there, like Age of Apocalypse. I would sit there and go, okay, flip this one, flip this one.
That's the thing. They could have like yelled at you and told you to piss off.
They could have kicked us out. And I do know other places where if you even looked at a book without buying it, or even literally touched it on the corner, there was this old man around the corner who had a record shop. Be like, get out, what are you doing? And he had these terrible comics that were flakes, and there were blue covers in the sun. They were chipped and ripping apart. And you would it was like an Australian reprint of Brave and the Bold with Batman and Adam Strange. And it wanted like $5 for it. You wouldn't pay 50 cents for it. It was garbage quality paper. And if you even looked at it to see whether it was not going to fall apart in your hands like confetti, he'd go, what are you doing? Get out of here. And actually that store used to be next to where I lived as a kid. We had a shop that had 2 fish and chip shops. We had like Golden Axe and Mortal Kombat arcade machines. There was a record shop. So I used to walk down there every day after school and just look at stuff. And I met one of my best mates in mid-school when I was about 12. And one day we're talking about, have you ever been down to that blah, blah, blah record shop on Selwyn Street? He goes, oh, that old bastard. Yeah, I know him. He always tells you not to touch those things. Because he's into music, Kiss and Beatles. He'd go there for the actual records. I just looked at the dusty comics head in the corner. And the guy was just like the worst customer service you ever imagined. He couldn't. He was so old and crotchety, and he obviously must have enjoyed music or something to run the store, but he just didn't like kids, I think. Just told him to get out of there.
He'd probably just had enough and just wanted to retire.
Oh, I reckon he was crotchety when he was a young man. This guy was this guy was full on.
Just a painful guy.
Yeah, the comic shop in the city, the folks were lovely.
Nice. What's the most expensive thing sitting near you?
Oh, don't know. Like, hang on, I'll just grab me little webcam thing here. Turn around. Like that statue is like Bebop from the Turtles.
Very nice.
Like that was about $250, I think, from Pop Culture, and that's solid. I don't like statues or even collect statues. Only till I have a him, and the other one over there. They were about $250 each, and they're solid as. Like they weigh probably a good 10 kilos.
They're really nice statues.
Yeah, the reason I got them right is because that came out before they did the NECA ones that were based on the animation. At the time, these statues, which only about 5-6 years ago, they were the first ever things that actually used the animation models as a reference that are accurate to it. Most other things, they've never done before that any version of Bebop Rocksteady in any of the lines that actually were based on the cartoon, because the sculpts came first, like the old He-Man. The sculpts came first, then they made the animation models later on. So I always loved those models. And then up there, same fellas again. That's the 3-0 Bebop and Rocksteady from those terrible Michael Bay Turtles films. Bad films, but good toys. They were a similar price again, but they're proper figures, and they're similar to like a Hot Toys, but they're a lot bigger. And they've got vinyl skin covering their entire joints. You can't see a joint or a seam or nothing on them. And the clothing is real material, like your old sort of 60s G.I. Joe style. And even the pants on them have like there's actual physical dirt on them. They've taken them, actually dusted them, and they've done stuff that kind of model makers and kit bashers would do on a deluxe toy. So they were pricey. And those big NECA ones up the back, that's those like one quarter ones, whatever. It's like Freddy, Jason, there's an alien. It's hard to see because the resolution's not good on this, but there's not
Is that
one but
Darth
two
Vader
Predators.
and Batman at the back?
Yeah, they're just your $30 Kmart ones.
Right.
They're just hollow plastic, but they look cool
Mm.
as I just like giant size stuff.
And what's the
So then
little pack
you
here,
go,
mate?
yeah, that was the Batfleck one from those fairly awful movies, but I didn't mind picking up the toys on clearance.
Yeah,
And then
right.
over up there, I just like giant stuff. Over there, I got big Transformer Titan toys that are quite large,
Yep.
and the Jurassic Park stuff, Brachio up there, big Omega Supreme, and got a Scorponok over there, and I've got other stuff over here. I got that prop replica Gremlin that was from NECA. That was like actually that's probably most expensive. That was about nearly 600, but I got it on sale for a couple hundred off.
Right.
And that's a foam. It's just made of foam, so it'll deteriorate in the next decade and turn to garbage.
Yep.
But that was an actual prop replica that's 1-to-1 scale, and I've never had anything like that. And I've always wanted something because I love monster movies and horror movies and special effects stuff. And when that was on sale, I went, "What's a cool monster? Gremlin." I got that, and it come in a box that was nearly as tall as me. But I don't go for pricey items. I mostly buy cheap, nasty actual toys.
Right. How are you buying your stuff? Are you like are you watching some of these online auctions? Are you eBaying? You mentioned pop culture.
It's all of the above. I tend not to bid on anything on eBay because I remember the days before eBay existed in the early years where people were just selling like I don't know a rusty lawnmower and complete garbage on there no one wanted. But it was fairly honest, and if you bought something, you got what you paid for. And then eBay became this like I don't know, just a place for just scammers and shills and all sorts of rubbish. And you've really got to sort through the rubbish on there these days to find the good stuff because you've got people charging like, if I want a loose scumbag like this that came off eBay. He's got his backpack, but he's missing at least 2 accessories. People want like $50 for that. You could used to get that for like $10, $20 all day long. And if you go to a market or swap meet, you can still find better deals than that. So I do get stuff off eBay, but I just cherry pick. I browse a lot. I look for good sellers that are reliable or comic shops, which seem to mostly be over in Victoria for the good ones. I buy stuff off there. I've got a big W that's 2 blocks from my house. I go through there every week. I walk through there. And I used to just look at the toys, but now I look at all the household stuff and other practical things as well. And I just do a circuit as part of my walk. And I go through, and I've got the entire toy aisle memorized. So if something's new or different, it stands out the moment I walk in there.
Yeah.
I used to do sort of drives where I'd go over east to hit up a few stores. I had a day off, and I had too much money and not enough sense, and I spent probably 6 or 8 hours just driving around hitting up half a dozen Kmart's, Big W, Target, whatever's around. And because you want to get like, the new Ninja Turtle or Batman thing, but they've only got 2 of the wave, and the next store has 1, and the next store, and maybe that last store has that mythical one that just no other store has, and you're going, come on, they might have it, just go. So I've done stuff like that, but I tend not to these days because it's so expensive on the fuel, and they don't often have the stuff in stores. So I just go online for 90% of it. I just like Amazon, eBay. Don't usually use BBTS because I prefer to try and get stuff local, like pop culture is my favorite one, just for getting bargains and free shipping. But all my Motu stuff I've been having to buy the Origin stuff from overseas, and that's been my obsession in the last year is just collecting the Origins. And I've pre-ordered a heap of stuff on BBTS because the line's winding up. It's it's 3/4 of the way through at least. And you just don't get it in the stores here. Big W was supposed to have it, but never fully got the line. They just got random bits here and there. So but I've been loving that line. I've got most of the Transformers I want. I've got most of the Ninja Turtles I want, and I didn't have the He-Man. I had 2 or 3 as a kid. That's been my obsession. And then I started buying that, and I went, if they do another line, I'm not buying another one because I had half a dozen from that 2002 line that they called 2000X. I had half a dozen from that I'd started to buy just before Origins came out.
Yeah.
And I went, well, okay, they're doing these. I kind of want it because they're, they're all the same basic, but you got the play sets and the vehicles that really makes it, just like Joe and all that. And I went, if they do another line, I prefer 6-inch, but they're doing this. It's got the play sets. I'll get this. But if they're doing another line, I'm ignoring it. And what happens as soon as I said that to myself, what did they do? They started cranking out these Masterverse figures, which are a lot more affordable than the old Matty classics that have gone skyrocket prices.
And they look a lot more precise, don't they? They're a lot nicer, actually.
What's that?
Those Masterverse ones were like a step up, weren't they? They were a lot nicer.
In some ways they are, and some of them are a bit better. Some of them are not as good as some of the classics, and just in the sculpt, not so much. They've got better articulation. Like this is a classics, but that's the Filmation style Grislaw, which and I've got the Masterverse Grislaw coming, who's more like the toy style. But when I got into that line, I started watching the show again, the He-Man and the She-Ra original shows, and I love animation. I love the animation models of the characters. So I did pick up the classics, Mantenna and this guy, just because they were in that Filmation style, and I'm still getting the other Masterverse stuff as well. I just like the cartoon, and Moduloc, who's not supposed to be wearing Beastman's thing on there, but I just put it on there when I was bored one day.
Yeah, it's all right. What do you think about the reprints or the reissues of the Ninja Turtles, the base Ninja Turtles?
Well, I'm all for it. Yeah. I'll grab one I've got just over here. Hang on.
Because I particularly loved that they were, spot on like the originals, and the price.
Not quite, but actually.
All right. Okay.
No, I love that they're doing them because they've been doing them since the year 2000, but mainly just the Turtles and not the other side characters and villains. See if you can spot the difference, which is the vintage and which is the reissue.
The vintage is the one on your left-hand side, isn't it?
So see how that one's got all that purple on the wings?
Yeah.
And that one's got nothing?
Right.
And then we go to the front of him and see how his chest, like he's yellowed on there because this is my childhood one. This is like the first one I ever basically bought. He's got details and colours there. It's the same sculpt, but then you get to there and like, no paint on there pretty much at all. Same with the feet. You won't see it on the camera, but on the vintage one, he's got little paint, veiny stuff on there, no paint on there. And I knew that going in, so I picked up some here and there. I don't mind it because they're under different costs and tooling. I know all your petrochemicals cost different prices back then. Yeah. So I get it. Yeah. I don't really care. It's not a big deal. Only nerds like me don't even notice to start with. But then I looked at the wings and the arms, and for no particular reason, they're actually a different length and not even the same actual. They must have lost the original of the these wing arms because it's a separate piece that comes out. They must have lost that because the new one's actually smaller and different measurements. So they must have had to re-sculpt that piece, I would think. But overall, they're pretty good. Like the colors are a bit off on the turtles, which is odd. But again, if you didn't have them as a kid, you wouldn't even know it was different because there's been that many shades of green for turtles over the years anyway. So I love that they do the reissues, and I wish they'd do more of them, and a bigger selection of the characters would be good.
Well, interestingly, mate, I went to Big Dubs yesterday, and they had new ones of them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've seen them. They've got the Sports Star ones.
Yeah, I've seen those ones.
Yeah,
I've never really cared for all the extra variants of the turtles they did. I've got my original ones, and I just don't care about all the extra ones. I just go for the original other characters like the villains and other mutants. I'm still trying to get Triceraton and a few other ones. I hope they reissue some more stuff because I've been trying to get a vintage Krang for about 5 years, and they're on eBay all day, every day. But people are charging crazy prices for them. No. Australians are charging about $50 for a loose one that's got like a broken leg and no accessories. But in America, you can buy a loose complete one for about 20 Australian dollars, but then the postage is $50 to $80. So, and when the postage went crazy, I noticed because I look on eBay like an obsessive nerd every week for 8 or 9 years. So I know how I've seen in real time the price change. When the postage went nuts here, Australians just went, it costs this much to get Krang for $20 from America and $10 postage. Oh, but now the postage has gone up. We'll just make our Krang the same price. So you just stuffed either way you buy it. So So I got the reissue Krang, and I bought a whole box set of 6 figures just to get the one Krang. It was cheaper than buying a single loose beat up Krang on eBay Australia.
Yeah, that's where I found. It's where I found if you're a toy collector, you kind of need to be involved in some of the online Facebook auctions.
Yeah.
You just got to be.
I agree. Especially if you're going for vintage stuff, which I don't particularly collect, other than Ninja Turtles. It's only vintage stuff I occasionally get. I mostly get modern things, but I follow a lot of those groups, even if I'm just a lurker and not really interacting and buying. I follow a lot of that stuff and just like see what people are up to and what things go for. And
I find it's the only way of sometimes getting toy pieces at the right price, because
absolutely, I agree.
It's decided by the people bidding on it, and when it gets too high, people will just stop bidding. So you can get it for those good prices.
Oh, the good prices are out there, but like I mean, I've lived in New Zealand, I've lived in Victoria, and WA is just the worst because it's the youngest, one of the youngest states. So there's stuff, all vintage stuff wasn't around here back in the day.
Yeah.
So if you're getting any of it, you've got to get it from the other side of the country or the UK or America. That's it. So you're paying more than you should to get anything in Perth, unfortunately. But that's
well, you're lucky.
We're paying too much for food here.
You are lucky, mate, because you've got I'd say probably one of the top 3 toy salespeople in Australia, in Perth.
What do you mean?
You've got Derek Westbrook over there.
Right, I don't know. So I'm sorry.
I'll hook you up into his group after we finish here. But he's he doesn't do, or he very, very rarely does online auctions. Instead, you just become part of his group, and he'll just like flash sale, like just put something up vintage, and you can either buy it or miss out.
Yeah, I see a guy in the US who does that on the Retro Blasting channel. There's a guy named Matt Swafford who does all sorts of vintage stuff, and he just does it through Patreon and doesn't bother with eBay and stuff, and gives people good deals on things, hunts out vintage stuff. He cleans it all when it's good condition. And
Derek, mate, I bought, like, I've got a beta Star Wars collection, and I reckon I bought about 80% of my Star Wars collection from Derek.
Oh, nice. Like when I get my Turtles odd stuff, when I get the vintage figures, I don't buy anything carded. I don't care about complete because the accessories are fairly garbage for most of the figures. So I just go for the loose figure in the best condition where the paint's not too chipped and it's okay. I'm not too fussy on them.
And what's in the middle of your units there? Is that Dragon Ball Z?
There's got all sorts. Hang on, we'll go like this again.
Yeah.
So go like, because I'll go behind it so I can steady it. It's only a low quality camera. I've got to get a better one.
No, you're right.
So it's all robots up the top there, pretty much Transformers. So coming down, that's NECA Turtles, like the animation Turtles, and a random Sting from WCW hanging up there.
Looks like you're a fan of the bloody Genghis frogs, mate.
Well, because they didn't make all 4 of them when I was a kid, and I always wanted the cartoon versions. The Turtles are there behind them, but because they didn't make them as a kid, I mean, some people in fan communities took the vintage Genghis and repainted them into 4 different versions to get those before those existed.
Right.
Down there, that was the Decepticons there, and that was all Autobots. That was pretty much all the 84, 86 characters. But I just packed them away last week, and I've just rotated into just new stuff. That's the stuff I'm opening in the next fortnight. There's a couple of boxed more NECA Turtle stuff in there, a couple of Super 7s. Down there, that's all Spider-Man villains and a bunch of Spider-Mans from the Legends, just like comic trades and stuff down the bottom there. Over that way is like robots up there, Nintendo amiibos and some video game characters in that little tiny shelf. That's all like your mid-80s Decepticons on there from the modern lines.
You got to laugh, mate. That Devastator just sticks out like dog's balls, doesn't it?
Well, that's a knockoff because the proper one is about 18 inches tall and they made it too big. So that knockoff, they downsized it so it's in scale with the other ones that are on either side of it. So it's fairly fragile though. Like, don't move it; it'll just
Right.
shatter.
Right.
That's getting too crowded. That's my homework. That's modern Beast Wars stuff from the Transformers line. And I wasn't into Beast Wars at all as a kid, but just in the last 2 years, I've watched the entire run of all the shows and all that, and gotten more into it. Down here, that's all Pokemon. That's a mix of, most of those are modern, but quite a few of the miniatures, some of which are also over here, I've had for like since 1998, because I started buying the first Tomy miniatures when they came out and playing the video games. A couple of Dragon Ball figures hanging out, like flying out on the edge of the shelves, just on fishing line, having battles. I think there's another one up there. Then below them, that's just some Masterverse ones. There's a modular leg, because his leg broke off when I got him. It was one of those classics, and I got him secondhand off eBay off a really good seller, great prices. But nothing to do with the seller. They just did a bad job on that third leg in the figure. It just snapped off the first time I touched it. More comic trades hiding behind there, Dragon Ball comics. I do have a whole lot. Before I had that Pokemon shelf, that was all Dragon Ball. They're at the tubs now. I got, if you know Jack Specific, around 2002, 2003, they did all the Dragon Ball figures, and they were at Kmart. And I remember going through Kmart one day with an entire shopping trolley of just Dragon Ball figures.
Right.
So I bought a heap of them. Comics over there. Some more stuff, more Pokemon in there. That's all animated characters loosely themed around 90s animation. You got Rugrats, you got Batman, you got Pokemon, you got all kinds of stuff. Big Optimus Prime.
Optimus right Prime. Up the back there. Is that an Optimus Prime?
That's an Optimus Prime knockoff of the MP10 that's oversized. Right. I got 3 of them. I got the white one, the black one that's the Nemesis, and then that one. So I got 3 versions of that. More Pokemon in there. That's a mix of the stuff we get at retail from Tomy. Then Jazzwares took it over. Those small ones on that wooden spice rack are from Japan. They're like called Pokemon Scale World, where they're smaller. Bunch of box sets. You got like Magnum PI, Miami Vice, all the good 80s shows, MacGyver, got Sailor Moon games. And then down the bottom there's more comics and stuff. Over here's me Masters. I got a Spider-Man big frame poster. That was a gift from my missus, who named Anne Marie, when I moved in with her about 9 years ago. This room was empty. It's an old bedroom. It was completely empty. And the first time I walked in here, that was on the wall.
Oh, that's excellent.
So she gifted that to me and got out. It's all brick here in WA, brick walls. So Uncle had to come over with not the little drill, but the big drill that's bigger than your thumb, massive drill to get and put that on there. And that was a wonderful surprise, because I've always loved Spider-Man, Batman, Marvel Comics. And the cool thing about that is the Amazing Fantasy was Steve Ditko on art, Stan Lee writing it. But the original illustration, they weren't happy with. He looked a bit wimpy. So they got Jack Kirby to go back and redo it. That's why he's all bulky and muscular looking. Whereas in the interior pages, he's all, nerdy little nerd Parker and skinny. This will be Masters Origins over here. Got the castle. See the guy with the sticky out neck? That came from Bevan. Bevan Davey gifted me that.
He's a good man, old Bevan.
and see the Grislaw? That's a vintage Grislaw, because I could not get the Matty Club Origins one for $1 million. So he gifted me that when I got really pissed off, and I was complaining to him one night about I couldn't get one, and he gifted me that. So I got that's my little cat lair. Bunch of wooden blocks I just painted grey with house paint in there. That skeleton's not normally there. It's just a Halloween decoration I was mucking about yesterday.
Are you trying to just glaze over that Scare Glow, mate? Is that an original one?
No, these are all Origins. The only vintage He-Man stuff I have is that Ratlaw and the Grislaw that Bevan gifted me. I did have a couple of figures as a kid, but they're gone years ago. So there's all that stuff down there. What's guys.
That wolf next to He-Man?
Hang on, go back there.
Yeah, the little wolf, the little white one.
Sorry, that's just a random. That's not meant to be there. I've just shuffled stuff around. That's just from the that Schley, that German company that makes the miniatures. I had him with the snake eyes from the Joe Classified, because some people paired him up before they made that wolf, and I only got the wave one of those. Couldn't get any more, and now I'm trying to pretty much give them away on eBay. green guys here. Got that McFarlane Violator up the back because
Yeah.
it's just a cool monster to put in with, Eternia stuff. And this ring
Yeah.
I got a few months ago. I love that ring so much because I love wrestling, and I've got tag teams in there. I got the Killer Bees, the Beastmen, the Skeletors, and the Snake Man, all going at it. More wooden blocks that I just painted up green, and I made it kind of slime looking, just PVA glue and house paints, all that's on that. There were bits of scrap in the yard that I was going to actually chuck out. And I've got other stuff down here. I've got Bluey and some Sylvanian families and Muppet Babies. Nice. I've got some Sonic stuff. I can't really show because it's floor level. I've got some Sonic stuff down there. Some stuff in there. Things over there. And I've got a whole bunch of Disney miniatures. And mostly it's just trades down on the floor there. And then on my computer desk, I got this a reissue Triptychon. He's a good fella. And I got some wrestlers just hanging out on the desk. They got some WCW guys. I had my Undertaker and Stone Cold and Kane here last 6 months, and then I just switched them out this week for WCW theme. And there's basically just toys in every direction, no matter where you look here.
So many, mate.
And I got more than that out in tubs out the back. So I'm always trying to sell a couple of things on eBay just cheap to make space for other stuff, because I've got a whole storage room out the back. There's about 30 tubs worth of toys and things out there.
And you
not as much
as
2 Sheds Bevan, but enough that it's a challenge to sort of more.
Bevan's out of control, mate.
Yeah, he's out of control, but we love him for it.
You mentioned your missus got you that beautiful frame. What does she think about your toy collection?
That's a tricky question. She's been very supportive. It's heating up here now, so the sun coming out, so get me being here. She's been very supportive. Like the main challenge for me is just keeping all the boxes and crap sorted and away from the living room area and that. We both buy a lot of stuff online these days, so we've got every other day there's boxes piling up at the door from online things.
Right.
She collects Kylie Minogue merchandise, memorabilia, magazine clippings, all kinds of stuff from all over the world. So we've both got about half each now in the storage room out the back of tubs. Is about half each of us. But no, she's been not just tolerant, but actually encouraging. She's gifted me a few cool things over the years. I tend not to. When family go, oh, can I get you something for a birthday? I'm like, don't. I've got so much crap I've bought myself. I'm trying to find a home for it. Don't do it. Just get me something simple like socks or a T-shirt. Yeah. But no, she's actually been really encouraging and supportive over the years. The main thing is just sorting the mess, because I'm fairly organised. Like I've worked in warehousing. I've driven forklift. I've organised large volumes of stuff for 8-12 hours a day before. So you're kind of doing the same thing on a micro scale when you're dealing with boxes coming in. What's rubbish? What am I recycling? Anything that's like one of those statues, anything that costs $200 or more, keep the bloody box, because the resale value, if you decide you don't want it one day, it's better to have that box, even just to ship it in as well. But no, she's been really encouraging, actually. Fantastic, which is nice, because I've known a lot of folks over the years who have, like people have ended in divorces over collections.
Yeah. So what's the future hold, mate? Are you like you mentioned that occasionally you'll get rid of stuff to make room for more stuff, and you're refining to the things you really want. Are we getting to a point where your room's just going to be full of stuff you really want?
Oh, it's about 3/4 there now. Like, I mean, the room is full, but like my next project is to organise the area directly behind me. See where those posters are. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff on there. I'm going to put a big shelf in there from that door over to the corner, and that one's going to be at least 4 tier, and it'll mostly be Ninja Turtles stuff, because I got cartoon stuff, I've got movie stuff out the back, I've got little ones, giant size ones. I want to do a whole shelf of just turtle stuff. Yeah. And I've got a bunch more things to get rid of, but I just have to cherry pick. I'm not too attached to any one piece of anything. You know, I've got my favorite things I like that I'm keeping for the long term, like at least by long term, I mean 20, 30 years If I keel over tomorrow, big whoop. I don't really care.
Mm.
I just go for the stuff I love, and I'm trying to refine my collection down to like the things I really like, and because I tend to hold on to things like my old double cross I've had for so many years. I've had a bad habit where I've bought stuff from 10, 20 years ago, and even if I don't really like it, I kind of keep it because I take it out and I go, oh, I might sell it, but it's still cool, and I fall in love with it again. I'm like, no, just give it away or put it on eBay because it's just a waste, and someone else might as well be enjoying it if it's not something I don't want to keep for the long term. So some things I will pick up on sale at Big W, and I'll go, okay, I'm going to keep this for 6 or 12 or 2 years and then get rid of it because it's just a fun thing to mess about with that I don't need to keep for long term. Whereas my reissue Triptychon, you can pry that from my cold dead hands, put that in my coffin with me. No one's getting that. I mean, they will when I'm gone. I won't care.
Yeah.
There's certain stuff I just will not part with, like, ever.
Maybe you need to reflect your will, mate, and put in there that you need to be
I probably
buried.
should. I probably should because I'm 43 now, and I'm like, I've just never really given us stuff because we grew up fairly poor, and I didn't, when you don't, when those damn advertising toys and pamphlets and marketers get in your head as a kid, and years later it's coming out, you're like, oh man, I'm buying all the stuff I wanted as a kid because I couldn't get it then. I just like if it all went tomorrow, I just wouldn't care. I'd just be like, well, it's good to enjoy, but like the joy to me in life, I mean, I love toys, is just what are you doing day to day? Who are you working with? Who are you talking with, and just how you are each day. That's the most enjoyment for me. And toys is just like an extra bonus on top. But I do get stupidly passionate about them.
That's all right.
Like I also wrote blog articles and talked to other folks online and kind of research about the lines and where it started and who did what and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Is there somewhere in particular that you write articles for?
No, just all my own blogs. I mean, I've done them for about a decade or more, just my own independent blogs. But people don't really read them much. But I don't care. I do it because I like I like research writing and learning about stuff and then writing about what I've learned. So I just do it as a hobby. It's just good. It's good for my mental health. It's just good, something to do.
Well, noting that this video is going to go into the wider community, do you want to give yourself a plug for your blog where people can find it?
I don't. I just don't care.
All right, that's fair enough.
I've got stuff on YouTube. I've got stuff on multiple blogs over about a decade. People find it through Google searches and that. They do get looked at. And I've done stuff I've written in a week. I've done articles from 200 words up to 10,000 words where I've researched anything 6 months to 2 years and bought half a dozen books just to write like one article. So it's just a hobby of mine. And I don't, if the internet wasn't around, I'd still be doing it. I'd just something I like to do.
Oh, that's great, mate. It's it sounds like you're putting back into the community as well.
Well, like when I was a kid, you'd talk about with your mates, like, oh, what's going on with Spider-Man or Batman or Transformers, whatever you're into, you just talk about it. And I just see like blogs and YouTube stuff. There's all the commercial side of it, which doesn't interest me at all. And the self-promotion. It's just about sharing, and it's just about communication and talking with people because I'm in bloody Perth and I can't talk directly to my friend over in Boulder, Colorado. So I'll put a blog and he can read it when it's convenient for him.
Yeah. No, that's great, mate. Have you got anything you want to, like we're going to wrap up. You got anything you want to say to the toy community?
Oh, nothing specific. I mean, like just the old credo of enjoy what you enjoy and don't let anyone stop you doing what you're doing, but also don't like lose your house over buying stupid bits of plastic and things like that.
Yeah. I always I find it, just intriguing that people come to the toy auctions and they'll buy something that's really expensive, but then they'll take 2 months to pay it off. But then you can see them buying stuff in other auctions, and you're like, mate, toys aren't for you. Like it can become a very, very expensive habit real quick.
Oh, it sure can. Like I've definitely spent way too much in the last 5 years on toys, but I kind of rotate what I'm into. Like, previously I was buying lots of comics, and then I was buying lots of video games, and
Yeah.
I used to have a massive video game collection. Like, it would have filled a garage, but I don't really keep a lot of it. I keep what's the last 5 or 10 years, and then just move on to whatever the new thing is. And
I actually had a little win yesterday, mate.
What'd you get?
Picked this up from a local person.
Oh, nice. I've still got one of my Mega Drives from the mid-90s out the back.
So I got this for $60.
Yeah. Oh, it's a good deal. Yeah, I Mega Drive was my favorite back in the day because Sega was more popular and old. So I've still got my old Mega Drive games out the backs from the 90s and that. And that's the one thing I'm kind of holding on to. Like, I sold off my GameCube, I sold off my Dreamcast, I sold my PS2s, PS1s, and other stuff. Sold my old Super Nintendos. I had 3 Mega Drives, but I kept the one that I actually had from back then. And
nice.
Like, I might put at some point on a shelf, I might bring my Mega Drive games and actually just display them on a shelf because I've had them so long. I don't want to sell them. Like, a few times I've been tempted because I could get something for them, but they're just sentimental value, you know.
Yeah, it's like you can sort of look at toys that you had from your childhood as being just as good as photos from your childhood.
Yeah.
Because you can hold your toys and just remember moments from your childhood just by looking at a toy.
I mean, this toy has been everywhere. It's been in Christchurch, New Zealand. It's been in Victoria, and now it's in Perth. It's travelled with me, you know, more than 5, 6, 8,000 kilometres or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's still going. And like, it amazes me the engineering on it. It's still going.
Yeah.
Somehow the screws haven't rusted because I've had several Junker Optimus Prime where the screws are just gone. They're just destroyed. And they must have just used better metal on these screws because they haven't rusted, even though I live in Spearwood. I'm 5 minutes from the ocean here. Everything in our backyard is full of rust because of the ocean, wind and sand. And this still hasn't rusted. So they must have just used good quality materials making it.
Yeah, it was a big problem with, like, I mainly collect G.I. Joes. And it's a big problem with G.I. Joes. You can tell the ones that went into the bathtub or into the local stream or...
Yeah, you got metal rust and then you got their leg bands going. And
I've seen some gross looking screws, like really rusted. But some of them, you know, you just get them out. And then I've seen some back screws on some Joes where I've had to drill them out with a nail drill.
Yeah, I haven't had to deal with that sort of thing, man. I've cut up a boat trailer with a grinder that took me 3 days and 12 hours because it was rusty, and I had to get rid of it just to cut it up and send to the metal scrapwork site. So I know a little bit about rust.
Yeah, right. Well, mate, I really want to thank you. I've had an excellent time today just listening to your output on your collections, mate. You've got a great collection.
You just got to tell me when to stop talking, not when to start talking.
It's I think it's a problem in our community that we don't, you know, people don't get to talk about their stuff.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned before, like, you know, your good mate's over in Boulder and you don't get to talk to him all the time, and doing these kinds of things, it's good. Like, I really like just listening to people's childhoods and how they feel about their toys.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for any bloody toys I got back then, whether they were licensed stuff or generic, whatever.
Well, you know, big shout out to Bevan Davey because he's the one that wanted this all to happen, and he's definitely happy for me to post these videos. So
he's been very supportive to me too, because I haven't met him in person yet, but I've been chatting online to him for 4 or 5 years, and sometimes I'm just in a foul mood, and I'll go on bloody blah blah blah. This happened at work, and he never tells me go away. I don't want to hear. He's like, oh, that's not very good, and he's so supportive, man. He's so supportive of people's like mental health and just like talking people up and looking after them, and it's just been invaluable in the community.
He's exactly who you want in charge of a group like that.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that attracted me. I've been in a lot of Facebook groups, other stuff online over the years where I just dropped out because they were just there were some groups that were just garbage and people posting really hateful stuff. And he's I think he's got similar values to me. I've got no tolerance for that. I'm like, no, get out. No time for any nonsense.
Well, mate, thanks again. And
Thank you.
You know, it's been an absolutely excellent interview, and I loved your collection. So this video was obviously recorded. It was our second attempt after the first one shit itself.
Good old technology.
No. But yeah, thanks so much, mate. And hopefully we can chat to you again in the future.
That'd be good.
Thanks, mate. And if you're watching this now, thank you very much for supporting the Toys R Us group and watching me talk shit and obviously listening to all of our beautiful guests from the toy community. So thanks very much, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.